So one of the first things you learn as a photographer is the rule of thirds. It's one of the most basic compositional rules, but not a lot of people really know why you use it. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the rule of thirds, why we use it, and some of the different ways that you can use this rule to make your photos more interesting. So everybody's familiar with the rule of thirds. Usually when you see somebody talking about it, you'll have an image with the lines or grid overlaid over the image and maybe some circles placed on the intersections. But I feel like it's one of those things where everybody uses it, but we don't really understand why. And I can't give you all the answers, but I can at least give you my opinion and why I like to use it. So I usually say that there's 3 different ways to use the rule of thirds, the 3 different rule of thirds. And I'm going to go over each one of those 3 ones right here. So the first way to use the rule of thirds is to actually place objects or a horizon or whatever you have going on in your image along one of the lines. So you have 4 different lines in the rule of thirds, and you have one horizontal one going across the bottom, a horizontal one going across the top, horizontal one going across the left, and horizontal one going across the right. Now, one of the common practices is to place, an object or the horizon along these lines, and I feel like this is by far the most misunderstood rule of thirds rule. And the reason I say that is just because a lot of people will go along with it and they will follow it so dead set that they're kind of even harming their images sometimes because they aren't really understanding what's going on with this. So my take on this is, let's say you're shooting a sunset at the beach or something like that. You'll want to use the rule of thirds, not because it's just a nice thing to do, but what it does is by placing the horizon at one of the horizontal ones, the bottom one or the top one, that will give you an emphasis on either what's on the ground or what's in the sky. So let's say, for example, I have a cool object on the ground at the beach. I'll want to place the image on the top horizontal line. So I'm still getting a little bit of the sky, but what I'm getting is more of the interesting subject on the ground. By doing this, you're going to have most of the image of whatever's on the ground, and you're going to have a little bit of the sky or whatever you have in your image. And the reason you don't want to put your whole image directly looking at the ground or directly looking at some cool clouds is because you're losing context. So the bigger portion of the image, the 2/3 that you're actually really wanting to show, is your focal point. That's your interest. But that last third is to show context. Because if you were to have a cool rock at the beach and you want to take a photo of that, you wouldn't just point it down at the ground and take a photo of the rock. You want to show its surroundings, show this is at this beach, this is what it looked like, or something along those lines. Now, part 2 for this one, for the first rule, is when you're taking photos of a person or even a car or something else like that. Let's say you have a person on the right side of your frame facing left. I'll probably show an image right here. Now, you're going to want to be putting them at one of those vertical lines. And once again, this is not just a arbitrary rule. There's some thought put in behind this rule. And what this is doing is it's utilizing the whole space in your image. So if you have the person over there on the right looking to the left, you're going to be seeing that whole, what would have been unutilized space had you put the person on the far left and they would have been facing left. There would have just been a big gap behind them. So what it does is it kind of utilizes what would have been empty space, and I guess it also will give a little bit of context to the image too. Now, the second commonly used rule of thirds is to place your object or your subject at one of the intersections in the image. And I feel like this is kind of similar to the first one, where it's utilizing space that would have not otherwise been utilized. Like, let's say you have a person standing on a cliff, and this person is facing in one direction, but you also want to maybe show the height or the vastness of the space below the person, but you also kind of want to show where they're looking towards, then that would be a good way to utilize both the vertical portion of the rule of thirds to kind of show how far down this rock goes, but it would also utilize the horizontal width of the image to show where the person is looking, so you have zero wasted space on the image. Now, for both rules 1 and 2, clearly it's not all the time that you're going to be wanting to do this, because sometimes you can put the horizon dead center in the image. Sometimes what I like to do is actually put it really far on the bottom, as you'll see right here. Like, this is a photo I took of downtown San Diego, and the water looked nice, but what I really wanted to go down there to show was the clouds. So, I figured, oh, well, the water's not as interesting as the clouds and the buildings and stuff like that, so I'm going to shift the horizon way far down on my image to really emphasize the clouds above. So, you can really push this, but what the rule of thirds is really trying to get you to do is to understand the focal point of your image and emphasize it more than some other aspects of the photo. So the third one is a lot different than the first two. The first two is just ways to kind of emphasize the more important parts of your image. This one is to kind of help create balance in your images. So I'm going to show this one for an example. This is a panorama, and yes, panoramas also require a rule of thirds sometimes. But what you'll notice is I actually divided the image into 3 portions. So you'll see on the left side and the right side, there's actually perfect rules of thirds there. So you have, the right, which is a wall, the left, which is a wall, but more importantly, they are dark walls. And then the center third of the image is very bright and has a person standing in the center of it. And what this really helps it to do is, draw your eye into the center, because it's dark on the outside and really bright and overwhelming in the center. I hope I was able to explain this in an easy enough way. I feel like the rule of thirds is something that's very misunderstood. Either people are going right by the rule, placing everything on the lines, which isn't necessarily the best case, or people don't understand the importance of the rule of thirds and why it's used, so you just kind of forget about it because you just think it's a pointless rule. So hopefully this is kind of able to show you the importance of this, and hopefully you can utilize it better in your new images. So if you can, leave a like and a comment. Maybe let me know, did I answer all your questions? Can I answer anything else? And maybe if you have an idea for a video in the future, I can do that for you. So once again, thank you for watching the video, and I will see you on the next one.